The Edmonton Oilers are just one more win away from clinching a berth into the second round of this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. They could do it at home against the LA Kings on Wednesday. For all the latest news from Oiler camp, let's bring in Ryan Rishaug. Ryan, we understand the Oilers can win big because they can score big. They scored 17 goals through the first three games. But now they just won scoring one goal, and they win the game 1-0. Have they just now become the most dangerous team in these Stanley Cup playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make that argument just based on the sheer amount of offense that they're able to produce, yet they still function well in that tight scoring game, right? I don't think that the Oilers as a group probably get enough credit, or the average hockey person or pundit, when they think about the Edmonton Oilers, I think that's where the brain goes, right? High-powered offense, high-powered offense. But I actually think this team has hung its hat on pretty high-quality defense for a lot of this season as well. Like, you go back to that winning streak that they had earlier this year, it was game after game after game after game of allowing 2 goals or less. I mean, they piled together more than a dozen straight games. So it's in this team's repertoire to be able to function and play mature hockey in tight games, but they're thought of still as this high-powered offensive team. That was one of the most patient and mature wins that I've seen from this group, Gino. They were clearly, there was a lot going on physically, right? The Kings were all over them from the drop of that puck. The Oilers were calm. They absorbed it. They didn't react. They didn't really even try and match the physicality. They pushed back a bit, but they were more just absorbing it. And if, like the first 2 periods, Gino, the Oilers gave up very little in the way of chances. And then in the third, Stuart Skinner was excellent, but they were patient and they waited. The coach didn't panic and make a bunch of line changes. The players didn't start cheating up ice looking for offense. Everybody just chilled. And yes, that makes them very dangerous, that they can function in that kind of game.
And now Stuart Skinner, let's be honest, Ryan, given what Skinner did last year in the playoffs, there were some serious question marks. Given the way he got out of the gate this year, the entire Oiler team got out of the gate this year, there were some serious question marks. But since the coaching change, since Chris Knobloch took over, Skinner's top 10 in goaltending numbers. And now in the playoffs, 33 save shutout in game number 4 after giving up 9 goals in the first 2 games, just 1 goal against on 61 shots in his last 2. Did you at any point believe that he had this in his game?
Yes. Yeah, I'll say yes, Gino. And if we recall back to our hit here on YouTube after game number 2, you were coming at me and you had some volume in your voice. You were coming at me on Skinner a little bit, bud. You were like, come on, Ryan. You were pushing me a little bit. And it was fair. Yeah. It was completely fair, because when you couple last year with the first couple of games of this series, people are going, ah. But what I referred to at that time was the composure that he seemed to handle himself with. The composure in his media scrum. And I know he's processing things a certain way. He puts a lot of time and attention into making sure that his mental game is really, really sharp, and he processes these things well. So I'm not surprised, because the one thing Stuart Skinner has shown is that he can learn lessons, right? He's not always going to do it right the first time. And last year he had a bunch of lessons to learn, but I think he's put those into practice. And I think what we saw after game 2, Gino, was him putting those lessons into practice, refocusing himself, and he hasn't had to be spectacular in either of the last 2 games. He's just been really good, and he's done his job, and he's, hasn't let any bad ones in, and he's allowed his team to stay in there. I thought he had this in him, because he's a guy that, to me, learns lessons and takes this stuff pretty serious, and his mental game is something he focuses on a ton. So while others were asking questions loudly, Gino, I knew all along. No, that's overstating it, but I did think he could definitely bounce back.
You did push back. In fairness to you, you did push back when I was saying, oh, come on, Skinner, like seriously, but now he's getting it done. What else is really impressive to me right now is what the Oilers have been doing on their power play. And they're better than 50%. To me, it's not just the fact that their power play has been potent, because it has been that and then some. It's the adjustments they're making to shift their game as teams catch on to what they're doing. All of a sudden, they're like, you know what? We got something else in our arsenal as well.
Yeah, so we'll go back to game number 1. And the very first power play of the series, I was in the press box and I looked down at the ice and I went, oh, that's different. They set it up different, right? First power play. They went and set up on the left side, McDavid on the half wall. They had like Nugent Hopkins at the right point. They had Draisaitl in the bumper. It was like, what's going on here? So they're throwing a wrinkle right away to confuse LA's penalty killing. And then, of course, one of the things they work hard at, Gino, is in misdirection. So Leon Draisaitl in Game 1 scores that unbelievable goal from the corner. Remember that shot? It was ridiculous.
Yes.
And so everybody thinks they're looking for Draisaitl. They're looking for Draisaitl. That's the one thing they're always looking for that, looking for that. Well, if you recall what Connor McDavid said after that game, he said, we still have a few things up our sleeve. So fast forward to last night's game, and they're that same setup on the power play. Everybody's where they normally are, and it's going to Draisaitl. Everybody knows it's going to Draisaitl, and then all of a sudden just bumps it back to Evan Bouchard. Everyone thought he was going to shoot that puck. The goaltender thought he was going to shoot that puck and came across, and then Bouchard shoots to the opposite side. That is a set play all day long. Draisaitl out to Bouchard, shoot it left. And it worked. That's Glenn Gulutzon and Connor McDavid and those guys having their meetings and saying to each other, how can we keep this fresh and make this different? And their power play has been unreal. But as much as their power play has been unreal, Gino, and I'm not sure if this was your next question, the penalty kill has been just an absolute, just astounding in this series. And special teams, it hasn't even been close. But the penalty kill deserves as much credit as the power play.
Or the fact that the LA Kings have been horrible on the power play. I'm not sure which way you want to go on that. No, that wasn't going to be my next question. My next question was going to be Evan Bouchard. You mentioned the big shot that he made. This guy's been unbelievable. And not just this series, not just recently. Since the start of the playoffs last year, nobody has as many points from the blue line than Evan Bouchard's 23 points. He had 4 assists in the opener in this series. He had the game winner in the 1-0 game. Did you see this coming from Bouchard again?
So what I'd say is the offense, yes. I think he has proven he can be counted on and expected to produce offense, right? He's proven that. So that part of it is not surprising to me. But what I would say about last night's game and chatting with some people, former players that know the game well, Jason Strudwick said he thought that was the best game he'd ever seen Evan Bouchard play as an Oiler in a 1-0 game. Right? So it's all the different areas of the game, right? It's defending. It's going into the corner and knowing you're under pressure and absorbing that hit and still making a calm, heady play. It's about, stepping up and controlling the red line rather than letting the team, get an advantage, controlling your gaps. Like, it's all those other areas of Evan Bouchard's game that are going to make the massive difference. Because we know he's going to bring the offense, but he really brought it in last night's game. The offense is going to be there. It's all of the nooks and crannies defensively, right? Number of times this season, Bouchard's attention to detail wasn't great defensively, right? It really wasn't. He made some big mistakes. And for a guy that's going to play those minutes, I think it's fair to focus on those mistakes and say, when it matters most, how are you going to be able to rely on this guy in an even game or if you're protecting a lead? Well, last night he was entirely dependable. So it's not just the offense. He's figured himself out from the red line back, and it's really, really high-quality play.
All right, let's turn the tables for a second and take a look at this now from the LA Kings situation. They're obviously facing elimination. Sure. They've pretty much done everything they can possibly do so far in this series. They played run and gun with the Oilers. That didn't work out well with them. They split the first 2 games. They tried to shut the Oilers down. They tried to adjust their neutral zone a little bit. They even made a goaltending change. They pulled Talbot, put in Riddick. David Riddick gets the start. He gives up 1 goal on 13 shots. He stood on his head, did really well, and yet he still loses. So where do the Kings go from here, Ryan?
You re-rack and you do the exact same thing again if you're LA. The exact same thing. And you hope for better results in a couple of small areas. Like, that was as good a game as the Kings have played against the Oilers, arguably in any of these series. Like, they were really good, Gino. They came out, they were banging and crashing. They were physical. They were controlling play. Now, they would have liked a few more high-danger chances, for sure, taking it to the middle of the ice a little bit, for sure. But wire to wire, I mean, look at the shot share. It was an impressive performance for them. So, same goaltender, same line, same system. Throw that back out on the ice against the Oilers again and hope for better results. Because I'm not sure that they can do that much better outside of, maybe, as I said, trying to get to the middle of the ice a little bit with some of those chances. That's as good a game as they might be able to play. And it was close, really close.
I love what the Kings tried to do. They even tried to intimidate the Oil. They out-hit them. I think it was 41-27. And yet the Oilers didn't get intimidated by that. Did that surprise you at all? The fact that they were willing to go
Yeah,
toe to
well,
toe, even in a
yeah.
physical
Do you know
game?
what? It's a great point, Gino. But this is the thing that I noticed from that game. So the physical temperature of that game shot way up, right? But it was all between the whistles. Was there one scrum after a whistle in that game last night? There was nothing. There was no nastiness. There was no, I don't know if anybody said a swear word out there. It was that kind, it was all, they were so focused on trying to be physical, but sticking to the game plan. It was so tactical. It was so precision. And they're getting deep into this series, right? And guys don't want to be wasting energy. So it was amazing to me that the game was that physical during play and it was that friendly between the whistles, considering how ugly this has gotten on a couple of occasions. So, yeah, I found that really an interesting shift in the dynamic of this series. There were some massive hits, but nobody really did anything about it. They all kind of took their licks and went to their corner and just played nice after the whistles. It was a big shift that way.
Ryan, I'm really enjoying this. And here's the good news. The way the Oilers are playing, you and I are going to be doing this on a daily basis for probably a few more weeks right now as the Edmonton Oilers head back home with a chance to eliminate the LA Kings on Wednesday night in Edmonton with a shot to advance to the second round.
Love my Gino time. Love my Gino time.